Cartoonist Steve Ditko is undoubtedly best known for having created Spiderman and Doctor Strange. There are a number of other creations he's made, but I think the most revolutionary and the most unusual and probably the least known is someone named Miss Eerie, who I'm going to briefly cover in this video. Miss Eerie is, I think, difficult for anyone to get to know because she has been serialized as a character in, looks like about 10 issues from 2009, which is this one here, through 2017 in the most recent issue. But coming in the middle of the story might be tough for a reader, and moreover, you really have to seek out these comics, which are published by Robin Snyder and Steve Ditko. You can go to their website and order them, but I don't think a lot of people would know to do that. But let's check out why Miss Eerie is revolutionary. For one thing, it's a female character, and in some prior videos, I've talked about how I've noticed that females in most comics today are portrayed as adolescent sex objects. They are basically objectified for the purpose of exploitation. And you can look at those earlier videos to see what I mean. I went into Midtown Comics, which is one of the major comic stores in New York City, and every single issue, and I literally mean every single comic issue, which featured a girl, featured her as an adolescent and sometimes even a pre-adolescent sex object, usually dressed as a stripper. So what Steve Ditko has done with Miss Eerie is create a female detective, and here we are. So this is the first appearance of Miss Eerie. The other thing of interest is that the whole entire story takes place in the 1930s, and I'm not sure of the purpose of that, except perhaps it gives a sense of a noir. Now, the other thing that's unusual, the costume, the superpower of Miss Eerie, really, well, I would say the superpower is her philosophy. And here we're dealing with the philosophy of what some would call objectivism. I feel it's more appropriate to call it Ditkoism, because it is Steve Ditko taking Ayn Rand's philosophy, but in my view, he individualizes it to his own interpretation. But the costume she has is this mask, which is here. And basically, in my view, the mask, although it is shown at some point as a literal mask which she wears to hide her identity, its purpose is to terrify people when they see it. And my theory is that the reason people are terrified is the mask is a reflection of the evil within themselves. Here she keeps the masks available to wear for when she goes out. She works as a PI, private investigator, and at the end of every issue, she turns over the culprits to the police. Now, as the story develops, there are some interesting things I've observed, I think. The second issue is where we first get to see Miss Eerie without a mask, and I think there's I don't know what Ditko would think of this, but I feel like there's almost a Jack Kirby type feel to the square jaw persona of the good characters. I just have a feeling that this is more than someone out of his imagination. It could even be based on someone. In this issue, there's more development of the character. There's actually a romantic interest, and unfortunately, that does not pan out. One of the things that is consistent to this comic book is an underlying philosophy, and that is the philosophy of virtue, and that one should never compromise one's values, which would be, in this case, the values of objectivism, simply to be with another person. So Miss Eerie is someone who is alone. She lives alone, but it's not that she doesn't want to have a relationship. It's that she would only have a relationship with someone who shares her values. There is the theme of private property. Now, it's interesting. Here, there's a guy who has stolen money, but he says he only stole it from dishonest people. And because he is involved with a friend of Miss Eerie, whose name is actually May, Miss Eerie or May wants to help them out. So the interesting thing is that private property is valued, and basically if you steal money from thieves, that seems to be something justified, at least as I read this comic. So here we have the remainder of the issues. As they go on, you can see there's a consistent, what I would call a Spartan, bare bones art style. And I think this would be very difficult for a lot of people to get wrapped up in, given our hyper multimedia life today. This is really almost, in my view, philosophical. And I do believe for that reason, ultimately it will stand the test of time, because unlike so many things, it has something to say. And this is the final issue, and what's interesting to me is apparently Javier Hernandez also is a big fan of this character. So it's catching on, and I think it's very worthwhile, but definitely one of the least known and most revolutionary characters of Steve Ditko, Miss Eerie.